Hello, and welcome to what might be the last Civ 6 tier list that I do. Um, the last patch has come out and the Frontier Pass has ended, so updates are probably coming to a close. I don't know whether they're going to make a new game or whether they're going to do another spin-off like Beyond Earth, but I'm looking forward to whatever Civ has in the future. The rankings will be a little different this time. Rather than using number rankings, I'll be ranking F the lowest, then D, C, B, B+, A, A+, and S. C would still probably be the average, maybe B and C being the middle ground, and I've given myself a little more leeway with A plus and B plus, so that I can really differentiate what I would say a lot of the civs fit into as the higher tier, who's slightly better or slightly worse than each other. As per usual, with any opinionated tier list kind of video, my opinions are in the most case going to be controversial, but it does fit to a specific playstyle. Like certain people like domination more, certain people like culture more, or religion, or I think each victory type could be more or less powerful than another one, or easier to achieve. So that changes everyone's ranking. So my playstyle may not fit with exactly what you think, but that's okay because I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, and on with the video. Now, a lot of people who make tier lists or civilization tier lists work through alphabetically based on the leader or the civ, but I'm just going to start with F and work my way up through the tiers. So the first civilization, and this should be absolutely no surprise because I think it's just the only one that can fit an F category, is Eleanor's England. This civ just really doesn't fit for me. It just seems like that's the reason it's the only one in this category, because other civs, even absolutely trash civs, I'm going to be putting in D, because they still have a function, they still have an identity, they still have a purpose, and somewhat synergy, even if all of that adds up to be pretty bad. Eleanor takes her amazing leader ability that synergizes well when she's playing France, in that you'll be going culture in most cases with France anyway, and you can use that to flip cities using the loyalty system, which is a really fun mechanic, and jams it onto England, which has no benefits to culture whatsoever, and it just really doesn't fit. Your Royal Navy dockyard is still strong. Your industrial zone and coal and resource bonuses are still strong as well. What she has from her leader ability is strong, and what she has from England is strong. Not ridiculously. I'm not going to rank either her version of France too high or Victoria's England too high. They're not exceptional, but they're really good, decent, synergizing civilizations. This civilization may be better than some in D tier, but I'm using the F tier to give it its own complete ranking because it doesn't make any sense. Statistically, you might perform better with this civ than someone I'm going to rank in D tier, but it doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work. It's the only civ that doesn't make any sense, and I would rather be playing Eleanor's France or Victoria's England because they're both better. This is the only civ that I feel there's no point playing whatsoever. I'm sure this is going to be a controversial one here, because I've ranked him low before, but the first one of D tier will be the Congo. Now, the Congo, I have played with them quite a lot, because I was curious to see why everyone else was telling me that they were not pathetically weak, and there's no room for them at F tier, because they do synergize well, but they still just feel so lackluster. Maybe when you get to the late game with what they've got, with what the civ is geared up to do, they can be quite strong, or at least the mid-late game. But their early is absolutely horrendous. They don't get their neighborhoods early enough to make them ridiculously effective, and you can accomplish the same stuff with farms, especially Mayan farms, which would give you gold and food anyway. Their religion benefits don't give anything if you're not near someone with a religion. You can't do that yourself. You can't set that up yourself. You're situationally strong or potentially strong. I haven't, ridiculously snowballed as the Congo before, besides on True Start because you're nearly left alone. You've got all the jungle stuff. But their random map spawn is situational, and their strength situational to whether they have another civ who's going to have a religion and spread it to them. And all those bonuses that they get from there will come from another civ. So I don't feel like that makes them strong enough. Their swordsman replacement is decent. The relic farming can be good if you get Mont Saint Michel, but it's just not enough. It's still not an awful civ, and I think it would be slightly better than some of the other D tier civs. This is probably a high D tier civ, but it's not great. Next up, we have another person returning to the lower side of the tier list with Gandhi's India. He just is so lackluster. He has things that make him good, but the faith from other people with religions is, you can get faith so much better with any other faith civ. And he doesn't have anything really outside of faith. The Varu isn't strong unless you're Chandragupta, because you're always using it on the defensive and you can't maneuver it fast enough. And they're just so much weaker. They're the only civ with an elephant without having a way of boosting its mobility or having it be ridiculously strong like the Kaimas, because obviously Chandragupta can, Vietnam can, and the Kaimas is a stupid siege engine, so that's really strong anyway. They're just so lackluster as a unique unit, despite being so strong because of the way that Gandhi works. He's just weaker than other religion civs. Next up is someone who I wish was higher, and that's Poland. They have so much potential. There are so many things I like about Poland. There's the winged hussars, which are ridiculously powerful and so strong to use, and that synergizes a little bit with the fact that their encampments culture bomb and push religion, but then that forces you into religious game. Well, it doesn't force you, but it entices you to go into a religious game. And then you've also got the fact that they have a unique I think it's market, a building in the commercial district, I'm sure it's market, that boosts trade, and then there's no benefits to culture or science or production for that matter, or food, but they do get production from the trade routes. There's just not enough drawing it together. It seems like a faith domination civ, but it's also focused on trade, and it's a bit confused, because if you want faith domination, you could do it way better with Spain or Byzantium. It just seems a little confused as a civ, and doesn't seem to synergize well with itself. Some of the things synergize, but not enough to make it a strong civ. So next up in D tier is Nubia, and they were stronger before their nerf to ranged units. The production bonus they get has gone down from 50% to 30%, which is a huge nerf, because that was, for the majority, what carried them. They're a little spawn dependent. You don't want to get an entirely desert spawn, probably, because they don't have the inherent bonuses that someone like Mali does, who's going to get to be able to produce food from the desert tiles. Nubia can work production and pull faith from desert tiles, but if your cities don't grow, they're not going to grow. And you want this ideal spawn of you want your city, or at least your capital city, or your first few cities, on a grassland or a plains adjacent to a desert tile, which is such a specific condition. And if you can get that, your Nubian pyramids are very powerful, but then that's kind of still it. They kind of don't have that range production bonus as high as it was, and everything else is a little lackluster and very situational. Oh dear. Georgia. Oh, you're a civ. So, coming back to Eleanor's England, this is the one. This is the one that she's probably, statistically, in how well you can win a game, better than Georgia. But Eleanor sucks because she doesn't work together. Georgia at least has a theme and an identity. It's just that it sucks. It's the whole faith defense game, sort of, I guess. But it just sucks. It has no practical play where it's not just a vanilla civ with, oh look, I killed a unit and got some faith. I was really hoping the buff that was meant to come in the patch was gonna fix Georgia, because they've always been probably the most lackluster civ. Probably not the worst, I mean, I guess, if you're going for a religious victory, but in every other sense, probably the worst. It's not exciting, there's nothing fun, there's no mechanic that I love, there's no boost to production besides walls or science or culture. The whole thing is geared towards faith, and even their unique unit, if you were going to do domination, absolutely sucks, so they're really bad. So next up in D tier we have Samaria. I keep going back and forth on this civ, and a lot of comments and a lot of other people's opinions seem to place them either as really high, or at least decently high, or really low. And I've decided that low is more kind of where they fit. Again, not the worst, because as I've said in every other tier list, the war cart is stupidly overpowered. Besides its production cost, which can slow you down to get this strategy going, once you have maybe 2 or 3 out, you're just gonna kill anything that crosses your path, so they're just ridiculously strong. But the rest of the civ, I mean, the tile improvement that gives science and culture is okay, but still there's nothing for food, nothing for production. You kind of have to use the war cart to kill someone early to get a good start, and the whole alliance bonuses, again, the synergy just doesn't kind of line up. He's geared towards early war and just killing like the first 2 people he sees, and then you're going to expect to have friends and allies while trying to play a domination game. I mean, I guess it can work out if you transition into something, but then the extra alliance isn't going to help as much if you're not doing a domination game. Like, it just doesn't really synergize. He's like the best AI you could hope for to be in your map, but that's it. You don't really want to play him. He's not too beneficial besides doing the early war cart rush. The final civ in D tier is Kublai Khan's Mongolia. It's just a shadow of Genghis Khan's Mongolia. It's just not as strong, not even slightly. It just feels lackluster and weak. You have these bonuses geared towards... I understand the synergy between you wanting to send trade routes because the trade posts establish immediately, and then them getting the Eureka off of that, but it's... That doesn't seem to make too much sense, because you're geared towards early to mid-game war with Mongolia and their abilities anyway. So you're kind of detracting that because you're going to want to trade with the first people. I know the idea is, oh, trade with them first and we'll kill them later, but like, you're going to want commercial hubs, you're going to want encampments, you're going to want... There's just a lot to get done as Kublai Khan's Mongolia. The economic policy slot is always going to be good. That's always a benefit, but I'm ranking this one here because I rank Kublai Khan's China a little higher, and he still has the economic policy slot, whereas this one doesn't synergize as well with the other tools that Mongolia has. It just doesn't work all together. And again, they're not an overly bad civ, but if there's, similar to Eleanor of England, there's a better Mongolia and a better Kublai, in my opinion, and it's just not really worth playing him too much. So moving into C tier, we have possibly what will be the most controversial one, at least of this tier, and that's Norway. A lot of people, I think, would rank Norway D tier. Their synergy is very lacking. The whole idea of the, oh, we're coastal raiders, oh, we want war, We want, encampments, harbors, and that early game kind of thing. But then they also have the stave church, which implies a religious focus. It makes sense historically, but in terms of a gameplay sense, you're not going to want to be building holy sites, or if you do, you have no guarantee or no bonus towards getting a religion. They're pretty, I guess they're okay, like they're decent once you get them up, but you're wasting a lot of time if you can't get a religion there, and even if you do get a religion, you're tearing away from what should be your longship conquest early game. Find anyone who's on the coast and take their stuff, whether it's literally with war or just stealing and pillaging and not actually successfully like taking something, just a pillage raid. The reason these aren't D tier is because of a very specific strategy with pillaging getting buffed over and over again. Well, obviously a while ago, but it got buffed quite a lot. And there's the policy card with it, the Viking longships, and just a war of pillaging can help you, or not even help, get you to exceed people scientifically and culturally as you take away their income of those resources, their gold, their science, their culture, and you gain them yourselves. And the yields you're pulling in because of Norway and policy cards and the fact that as with the Norwegian units you're able to do it easier, there's just so much to gain there. So these guys kind of land in C tier because they, in a very, very, very specific scenario, they're overpowered. Like, this strategy is nuts, and I would recommend trying it to anyone. But overall, if you're just playing them as any other Civ, they're pretty lackluster and probably could be in the D tier. Next up, we have Arabia, and they have bounced around a lot on my lower rankings of all the previous tier lists, and in my opinion, since those tier lists, they are a decent Civ, I guess. That's the majority of what's going to be going into C, and some of B will be just slightly more decent or more situational versions of all-round good Civs. So they're all right. Their last profit ability is kind of lackluster. I guess you don't have to focus it, but you're losing out on if you have specific ideas for what your religion is going to be or specific traits that you want to choose for it. You're going to most of the time lose out to those because you're getting the religion last. Their science bonuses are absolutely fantastic, but don't really have anything to get them running early on. All their bonuses seem to come in the mid-game. And sure, the culture from the worship building that they get, the extra percentage culture, and I think it's science as well, that they get is a bit late for a culture to be as effective. Culture's always nice when you're getting it, but if that came earlier, if there was an earlier way for the Arabia to get culture, they could be up a tier or two. If there was just one of their bonuses, like if they had a way to get going with science just a little bit quicker. Obviously, you're freed up to do science by not having to rush a religion, and you can go campus first rather than holy site first, but you're probably going to get them both anyway, because otherwise you're going to have a quite lackluster religion. They don't really have anything that stands out. And I mean, the Mamluk is fantastic, but there are better units, and it's not what they're geared towards. You can use them for war, but they have no other benefits towards war. It doesn't really... some of it synergizes with the science faith game, but it comes a bit late. Egypt is a Civ I've ranked lower than this previously, but I'm putting them in C tier this time because I've had a bit more play with them and understood their early game bonuses a little more. Their trade routes, if you happen to spawn nearby a city-state or a Civ, can give you a lot of early game money, and by spawning on a river, or being near a river, or settling river, or whatever, you can place your districts and wonders adjacent to those river tiles, and will produce them faster. So Egypt has just a easy, quick start kit to the game in terms of building infrastructure and having a lot of money. Their trade routes can be a drawback if you're sending them to what could potentially be an enemy civilization, because it's going to help them grow, but you will get a lot of money out of it. Their unique unit is really, really strong, but so expensive. and usually not worth going for besides the era score, in my opinion, because you just have so much else to build. Egypt wants to build up real big with this infrastructure. However, if you have Magnus or a lot of forest or both, and you have a way of chopping them out quickly, I think they can be very, very powerful, unique units. Their Sphinx is okay. That's faith and culture. The faith is a little odd. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but they have no inherent bonuses to getting a religion, so it's just kind of thrown in there. It would be great if you can get a religion as Egypt, but there's no inherent bonuses besides the extra percentage district production if you put it next to a river. And if you can get an early pantheon and link it up with River Goddess, that can be a very strong way to play Egypt. They are still a little lackluster and would probably be the high end of C, but I don't think it's enough to push them into B tier. There are several other early game civs that gets a much bigger boost than just a 15. And I'm not saying it's the 15% production is little, but it could be a lot bigger. You know, even Nubia is getting more than that if they get their Nubian pyramids down, especially if they get them adjacent to the city center. They're getting a much bigger amount of extra production towards districts than that. We also have Kublai Khan's China in C tier. He is higher than the Mongolian version, in my opinion, which I've put in D tier, and it's still weaker than main China, and will come up to where I've placed that later, but the loss of the builder charge to boost wonders is just one of the best things. You get the extra builder charge and you can use it to boost wonders, is one of the best things about China. They're left with the worst parts of China, like the Crouching Tiger. I mean, the Great Wall's okay. I have been a bit harsh to that in the past, but I still think it could do with a military buff, but the Golden Culture is fantastic. The Crouching Tiger is absolutely trash, and it's better to build a crossbowman every time besides the era score. The economic policy slot is always good, and I think you can utilize it better with Kublai Khan's China rather than Kublai Khan's Mongolia. That's very nitpicky because obviously you can still use it fantastically with Mongolia. It's just they could be better suited with a military slot, whereas China isn't looking for, I don't know, a military slot or a diplomatic slot extra. An economic one is a really good one for China to have. Their early game is just weaker than the other China, and the buffs that they actually get that make them different from this from Qin's China, I can't pronounce anything, are the international trade, which you are going to have, I guess, but only with people you're near. Like, maybe you'll get the boost off 2-3 civs, possibly. The boost is going to be bigger because you're China, but unlike the Mongolian version, the trade post isn't instant, so you're going to get the boost at the end of the trade route. So I can't remember how many turns that is, but after a decent number of turns, you're finally going to get a boost, maybe 2 or 3 times in the early game where it's going to be more worth. It can still help in the later game, but you're only going to have a finite number of civs. Well, I mean, maximum you're going to have 11 boosts, unless you modify how many can fit on a map. And 11 boosts isn't fantastic, and that's going to be on the biggest map if you can reach every single civ with trade. So it's not enough to make him stand out, but with an extra economic policy slot and the Great Wall, it's okay, I guess. So following this, we have Brazil, and quickly to start off Brazil, I want to talk about a point that kind of fits for the Congo as well. I forgot to mention it when I recorded them. But the whole idea of spawning in the rainforest, you often find yourself pigeonholed into wanting a lot of rainforest to utilize best the, neighborhood district or the massive adjacencies that Brazil can get. And they can be quite strong with that, especially if you get the Pantheon that boosts faith adjacency, because then it's doubled up again with Brazil's natural bonus. However, you find yourself often, if you get a particularly rainforesty spawn, having to rush bronze working to be able to cut them down to place the districts in the first place. You want to play the religious game, like I mentioned, as Brazil. You might not be able to do that because you might want to get the best adjacency, especially for the holy site in your capital. You can get some plus 8s with the special Pantheon that boosts rainforest adjacency, but you may need to cut down a rainforest in order to get that placement. Sometimes you can be lucky and you can have a grassland or plains tile surrounded by rainforest, but if that happens in your capital, what's the chance of it happening in your second city? And you can often find yourself pigeonholed into rushing bronze working and not and only having a encampment district to place once you got there, or rushing for holy sites or for campuses and finding that you can't place them anywhere that would give you the good adjacencies because you can't cut down the rainforests. So their bonuses also come with drawbacks. More specifically for Brazil, their Great Person project is pretty decent and the Street Carnival is good. The extra amenities are always good. Their unique battleships are a bit odd. I don't think it synergizes well because Brazil doesn't have anything inherently for the coast. I'm not even sure if they have a spawn bias because they have the one towards the jungle anyway, but they might have multiple. But, it's going to be like, your 4th, 5th city in most cases. When I play Brazil, I see that you're not going to get a coastal city until a few cities down unless you rush for the coast. But you're not really going to want to do that because then you're going to lose your inherent jungle. They can be good, and I've tried out a preserve game since the appeal update for rainforest, but still, even in that case, it wasn't enough. Brazil just seems so lackluster. Their lack of infrastructure because they keep their rainforests up, or you can choose to cut them down, but then you're losing Brazil's benefits. But they just don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the mines. They don't have the farms. Where's the housing coming from as Brazil? They're not going to grow very big, even though they've got good food yields, because they haven't placed any improvements. And then you're going to have to wait for aqueducts or sewers or neighborhoods, and you only get one aqueduct per city. The whole idea of preserving the rainforest as Brazil and wanting to keep them alive for their benefits is also a drawback, and it kind of means the Civ can be good, but for the most part isn't too great. Next we have good Chandragupta, because it's just the only way to play India in my opinion. Gandhi absolutely sucks, and this guy's only going into C tier, but there is a way to make this guy strong, similar to the way that Norway's kind of but if you abuse one of their specific abilities or one certain playstyle, you can be ridiculously powerful. Chandragupta takes the pathetic, slow-moving Varu of Gandhi's India and gives you a special war type that you can declare earlier on of territorial expansion, and just gives all the elephants speed, and then you kill everyone. That's it. He can be phenomenal in the same way that Norway could, or you could happen to be phenomenal as Arabia if you do a Mamluk rush. It's just gonna be good if you have a bunch of big immortal units yeeted at the enemy. It's just gonna work. And from there, you can platform a win. You can take one city, not one city, you can wipe out one civ and use the double resources that you now have as a stepping stone into you could transfer into a military game, into a science game, into a culture game. You can kind of do what you want if you've taken out a Civ and have a decent chance of winning, or at least coming in the top few. However, if you don't abuse this, there's not really anything strong about him past that special war. He's just as bad as Gandhi, who's gonna focus more on war, so is gonna have a weaker faith game, I guess. I mean, there's no inherent that you don't have to have a weaker faith game, but you're probably going to want to, because you're going to want an early war, because that's your go time. The Varu and the territorial war is your go time. Sure, the war lasts for the whole game, like the special war type you can use at any point in the game, but it's most effective when you're using your unique unit with it. So he's just kind of a meh domination civ without that early rush, so I guess he belongs in C.
Amazing music tracks.
Next up we have the Rough Rider persona for Teddy Roosevelt and America. This persona gets the Rough Rider unique unit, which it replaces the Corsair, it gets culture from kills, and it's decent. It pushes you in a more domination-focused direction rather than the sheer culture. You can still do culture, but it's culture through domination or sheer domination, rather than the Bull Moose persona, which is more gauged around the national parks, and we'll see where I rank that later. But so he has that unique unit. He also has the unique ability of extra combat strength on the home continent, which is decent and kind of again pushes you in this domination focus. And you have a really, really powerful, like really strong chance of pushing your domination early game with whoever you find on your continent, but the Rough Riders aren't going to come in then, so you're going to be going against people with your normal units with just a flat combat bonus, and that can be good, and the extra combat helps, obviously, but if you're going for a domination strategy, which is the direction of this version of Teddy, it's the combat bonus kind of goes away because you're expanding everywhere. You're going off away to other continents to fight the wars, so his domination bonus kind of falls flat. He's pushed in a domination direction. You know, there's a fighter unique unit, there's a crusader replacement, there's extra combat strength on home continent, but that's more of a defensive thing. The fighters, I guess, are sort of more a defensive thing. I don't really play that much of the later game too much. Whenever I come to that point in the game, it's either, oh, I'm so far behind I've lost, or so far ahead I've won. I haven't used fighters enough to give a good case for this unit, but it's still, the way I think it sort of works is they're mainly anti-bomber, and that's more the implication of defense, as is the combat strength on the home continent. The Rough Rider is more an aggressive unit because it's fast moving, but still, it's all just a little too defensive for someone who's pushed in the domination direction and given a separate identity from his Bull Moose persona. So following this, we have Sweden, who, in theory, I think, should be quite strong. Looking at their abilities without play, I thought this was going to be a fantastic civ, and, well, it is a fantastic civ. They synergize well with themselves, and what they do is decent, but it's nothing special. It's just a kind of okay civ. Their buildings and wonders are auto-themed, which is decent. They can build the unique late-game government building with great work slots, which is decent. The unique unit is pike and shot replacement, so it's kind of I guess. Unique World Congress events they're a lot of fun, but they're for everyone. They're not a bonus for Sweden. Sweden's in the game. That changes up everyone's game. Not anything for Sweden. Like, it's nothing to do with them as a civ and how they'll play the game, unless they happen to win them all. Some of them are great person-based, so the extra great people that they earn is decent, and they get diplomatic favor for each great person earned. And they also have the Open Air Museum, which is loyalty and culture and tourism. For every terrain a Swedish city is on, it's 2 for each, so you can max it with 10. However, all of these bonuses are fantastic, and similar to how America used to be before his personality split, lol, they just don't have early game. They have a fantastic late game culture. They have ridiculous great person point generation, and turning that into diplomatic favor is great, the extra boost that they get. But there's no inherent early game for them. There's not even a mid game for them. They are mid-late to late game. And, you can push a diplomatic victory, you can push a culture victory, you could probably even push a science victory. But it's all just too late. Anyone else who is a decent civ, who has had a decent start, or any early game advantage, looking at the other civs in C tier, Norway, Arabia, Egypt, China, not Brazil, Chandragupta, and America could all just steamroll them if they were next to it, because they have something to fight with. They have something early game and something to fight with. If Sweden had a unique unit that came earlier to defend themselves with, and then get to their early game, or if one of their buildings came early game, to wait to get to the later game bonuses like the unit and everything, it would just be more well-rounded, and probably a B or B plus at least, possibly even an A, if they had some form of early game, because what they have in the late game is absolutely fantastic. The amount of culture they can output is great. There's nothing to get them there. Then we have the Maori, who are a very interesting civ, and they are a lot of fun to play, but it unfortunately doesn't make them good. Their lack of great writers means that even though they have the unique building replacing it that can give them the culture that they're missing, the great writers often would give more, and losing that means the tourism game is going to be more challenging, especially if you're not experienced with the Maori. The main drawback is that though they have the boosts, starting with the two ship-based techs, and have culture and science income before settling their city, they're just so. Oh, and the free builder, upon settling, but they're just so dependent. It's just the RNG civ. It's like you could sail across the sea for 2 turns, find a continent, and be completely on your own, and just have your own massive island, and just be not contested and win the game. That's it. They have no spawn bias, but alternatively, you could sail for 20 turns only to plant your capital next to, I don't know, Chandragupta, who just then hits you in the face with an elephant and you're dead. That's it. That's your capital. There's no barrier between you. There's no, because they don't have because their spawn is in the ocean. It's up to you. You have no idea on distance from other civs. I mean, I know the spawn for everyone is random, but you can usually assume that the game has decided, oh, you can place one, maybe two cities in between, usually about 2 or 3 cities in between where you spawn and where an AI spawns at the minimum. That's in my experience. There can be cases where that's different and it can be a lot worse, but the Maori, you don't have that. You're just in the sea. It's up to you to make the usually terrible mistake on where to settle. Their whole not chopping down forests is pretty bad too. It means you don't have any production bonus. It's just they're really fun and they're an enjoyable play style, but they're not powerful. They're just it's good. It's a good civ with great synergy, but it's not. You know, there's the chance that you have the best game of your life, but it's not high. So the buffs that Canada got does make Canada a lot better than quite a few of the civs in here. Situationally, Canada could probably have the best game out of anyone in C, I think. Maybe. I might regret saying that. But the stuff they've got, the production they can have, the farms, extra food, the production on camps, the production on mines, all the stuff that they get from being in Tundra is absolutely fantastic. It, in my opinion, makes them a better Tundra civ than Russia. But we'll come to where Russia is on the tier list, and Russia isn't just a Tundra civ, because there's so much more. Whereas Canada, this is like their only thing. They're gonna kind of just be a normal civ with no benefits whatsoever outside Tundra. That's kind of it. So what, you're gonna settle a few cities along the Tundra and then that's it. Russia can do that and then move out, and then move into grassland, into plains, and use the Tundra they have where they spawn. Or even if they don't spawn in Tundra, they're still going to have a fantastic game. Canada needs the Tundra to thrive, and even with that, I felt the last time I played Canada, I felt the farms were great, the farm improvements were great, the cities were growing huge, but they just had no production. That was the drawback. I was lucky to get like a few hills or a few lumber mills down in each city because of the placement, because it was so close to snow anyway, that I wasn't getting many mines, I wasn't getting many lumber mills, I wasn't getting many camps. It's still pretty lackluster, and it's not enough. Their ice hockey rink is great, but it's later in the game. the stuff they get from that and being next to a stadium and all the boosts come even later than the ice hockey rink itself at professional sports, and you're going to need some way to get there. The diplomatic favor they get is nice, I guess, but per 100 tourism, that's late. The Mountie now has two park charges, which is great if you can set up for where parks are going, but you don't. I didn't find myself having too much room in the last game I played with them because I was trying to keep in Tundra and then I was completely boxed in, but I didn't want to go to war. I can't even, can they go to war? No, they can't go to surprise war. They can go to normal war, I think. But it's just there's not enough. They're just quite lackluster because you can't get going. I found myself just having tons of food, not being able to produce anything, not having any science boosts, not having any culture boosts, no production boosts really, besides the odd camp that I found, and it was all the same luxury resource because I was stuck up in the snow. It's just, it's a lot of fun and it's a cool playstyle, and I like the idea, but I think they just need something a bit more. I think they need just a slight buff. I was on the fence whether these guys should be in B, but I did at the last minute take them out of B because I think the people that I'm going to be putting in B are just more well-rounded. I think Canada could easily be as powerful as someone in B or even B+, but it's just they're not. There's the chance of that happening. Sure, if you get St. Basil's, you're going to have the game of your life. You're going to have the strongest Canada and strongest Civ, especially if you can get that in a big tundra capital. But you could say the same if Mali gets Pectra, it's going to be broken. It doesn't work like that. That's not their strength. Moving up to B tier, we have Catherine's Magnificence persona and France. She has some early game issues, but she does excel in the mid to late game. She doesn't get the spy benefits, but what she gets is not only do her chateaus help her with culture and gold, but adjacent luxury resources get extra culture yield, and her theatre squares can also do this ability as well. This would be overpowered, well, not overpowered, but put her into A or A plus tier if it came a little earlier, but your theatre squares aren't going to come up that quickly, and your chateaus come quite later into the game. Their unique unit now replaces line infantry, so France is better as a whole, I feel, but this sits happily into B tier for me. Also, following her in this tier, we have Eleanor's France, and she obviously doesn't have the culture from Chateau and theatre squares, but keeps all the other French bonuses. And she takes the idea of building up theatre squares and collecting a lot of great works and turns that into an incredibly aggressive potential, or passive-aggressive potential, in that your great works exert loyalty pressure and can help flip cities. Now, this is incredibly powerful, but kind of in a similar way to Norway is a kind of gimmicky play style. It doesn't always work, and it's a lot of fun, and I would really recommend it. And in terms of fun, this is an S-tier Civ, and I would say Norway is an S-tier Civ in terms of fun if you're playing that one playstyle. But in terms of the overall package, she sits happily in B tier because overall the French benefit is better than the Norwegian overall Civ, but she still has this very cool playstyle, but it's not overpowered or it's not too strong. Following on from what I've said about Kublai Khan, here we have Qin's China, or Quin's China, because I always pronounce that wrong, and I can never get it right, but I'm sure I've said it right one time, I just don't know which one it is. But overall, this is better Civ than I've given it credit for in the past, and I think Kublai Khan's China has actually brought that out. No, they don't have an economic policy slot, and they're not getting the trade benefits, but their Eurekas are bigger. They can get them off of wonders now. That was a huge buff, so you get a random Eureka and inspiration when you build a wonder. I can't remember if it's all wonders or wonders in the ancient classical era, because that's the ones they can boost with their builder, which they also have that ability. And yes, the Crouching Tiger is absolute garbage, I've said that before, but then you have the Great Wall, which is still decent, and they just have the better buffs than Kublai Khan's China. It's just overall a more complete package, and getting those early wonders out can really set you up. Having all these bonuses in the early game is what really makes them stand out, and maybe I'm ranking them still too low, but in my personal experience playing them, I don't think they come higher than this for me. But they're really great to an early start if you can secure those wonders. But someone like Egypt could easily, with a river, secure them faster than you, or at the same speed. So you're going to be fighting over those early wonders, but if you can get them, especially pyramids that stacks with your build charge, you can be set up for a really good game. So next up we have the Netherlands, and similar to how I've ranked China, I am looking at their early game strengths more than I have before. The culture they get from trade routes is incredibly powerful because it's not just a gold resource like Egypt or food or production. It's something that will advance you through the technology tree of the game early on in the game. If you spawn near someone, if you spawn near a city-state or a civ, your trade routes to them are going to get you to early governments. They're going to get you to early policies like the one that boosts settler production, and they're going to get you to the early government, which is a stepping stone to launching yourself through the game. The unique unit and the harbour culture bomb is kind of there, I guess. Maybe you were going to do that with your 3rd, 4th, 5th city, and it's strong, but it's not really where the focus lies. I'm looking more to the trade routes and also the river adjacency. If you're well versed in the game, you'll know how to plan out your cities as it is, and if you know about the aqueduct adjacencies with industrial zones, you can produce a mega city with ridiculous adjacencies around a river. And that makes them very strong, but still slightly situational, and a little bit of they just need a little bit to tie them together. I feel like the coastal stuff and the river stuff and the polder stuff is a little bit too much, but all round a great civ for the early game to get your start going and get off to a strong start with a strong civ. Following on from here, we have the only England that I'll accept as a civ in the game, and that's Victoria's England. She has a lot of strengths. I missed the British Museum buff, but that sort of fits with Eleanor's France, and I do like the industrial rework because it makes a lot of sense. The production helps them mainly go for a naval domination game, but it could also be helpful for science or culture or any game, especially for science and domination. But the Royal Navy Dockyard helps them build up a lot of money, helps them build a big navy, and they're just really good at colonizing and not just taking over the people overseas, but they're really good at settling overseas. As long as there are other continents, you're getting free soldiers, you're getting free units, you're getting free buffed cities, you're getting... everything's just better overseas, and I like that aspect of them, but they don't exceed much at the base than a naval domination civ that could also be okay at the other victory types. So as much as I like them, I do have to put them in B tier. Moving on to the next civ, we have Persia. They're a decent all-round civ. Their international trade and unique improvement can help them earn money and culture. It did used to be more appeal than it was. I think it was debuffed, but it's still pretty good. But I think their strengths, like although those are important to help them get off to an early start, similar to China, similar to Netherlands, similar to a lot of people I'm putting in the B section, it can help you boost yourself to an early head start of the game, but I think their real strength, similar to someone like the Samaria playstyle, you can just go when they have, or Chandragupta, you can just go when you have your unique unit. They have a unique war that, well, not unique war, but they have a unique version of the surprise war that buffs them and means you aren't going to get war weary from it. I think it's movement and strength, or maybe just movement, and that's really strong because it means you can move in with your unique unit, which is the Immortals, which are possibly my favorite design of a unit in the game. It's a melee unit that also has the ranged attack. It's not the same, but it reminds me of Civ 5's Impy Warriors, and I think that's just incredible. I know they were slightly different with their melee attack included the ranged attack, but with the Immortals you get to choose to do one or the other. So if you bring a battering ram, especially if it's early game and there aren't walls up, or even if there are the first level of walls, you often don't find yourself needing siege or even ranged units. You just send in Immortals. Your whole army can prizes of immortals and a battering ram, because you can siege down the walls with ranged attacks and then attack it with the other units. You can just surround the cities completely with immortals, and they're going to be moving faster with the surprise wall. So they are kind of more pigeonholed now than they were into a domination game. But again, similar to other civs, you can take a domination game, you can take someone early on, and their power spike kind of doesn't drop off because surprise wars and the move speed is quite great. But the immortal unit comes like in the classical era, so it's quite a good time to go with him, and you can build on whatever you've taken off other people into other victory times. And obviously you may be more inclined to go in for culture with the culture buffs that he gets, but it's really up to you once you've taken out one, maybe even two people.
Amazing music tracks.
Following England's lead as a coastal civ, we have Indonesia also in the B tier. They get good adjacency from coast, and this can be even higher if they have a reef, so campuses can be quite good for them. Their yields lots of faith. They can spread religion across the sea easier, and they can buy not religious units, they can buy boats with faith, like naval ships. And they have a special naval ship, the Zhong, which comes earlier than the frigate, and I think is more powerful. And probably does something else, but that's out of my mind. I don't play with ships too often. But what I really like about them, what I like about them most, and I'll be ranking civs with similar unique improvements higher on this list, and they're only a bit restricted because they have to be in the water, but it still makes them really good, is the Kampong, I think you pronounce it. This unique improvement is really, really good. It gives you housing, it gives you production, it gives you things that you won't usually be able to get on the coast, and you can focus coastal settling, and you can still have, for example, the production you need without having to desperately rush a harbour to get to seaports and have production. Or they'll give you housing before you get to the lighthouse. They give you a lot of what is missing with a civ that would spawn on the coast, especially if your capital is there. They just give you the yields necessary to run a proper coastal empire. Possibly a controversial one next with Scotland, and I think they are, or could have been, a top tier science and production civ, or science overall, because production is going to help you go to space. Their boosts with amenities and keeping cities ecstatic and happy and getting production and science from that is great. However, their other things don't seem to synergize too well. The golf course makes sense historically, and it also makes sense in terms of the amenities it's going to bring, but the culture, I guess, is useful, but it's not really synergy with what they're trying to do with the rest of their stuff, and the gold is nice, but more importantly, you have to go for the theocracy government for Reformed Church Civic to get it, and that's something I've never found myself doing as Scotland. If I have a religion, it's more matter of fact than a game that I'm planning to play for them. They also have the unique unit, which is in the Ranger tree. I think it replaces the Ranger, it's in the Recon tree, sorry, and they're always weak. It's always a pitfall of a civ to have a unique unit from the Recon tree because they're just weaker than everything else. The Liberation War, similar to Australia's one, gives them production, but again, it's still quite weak because you aren't doing a Liberation War too often, and the opportunities for Scotland doesn't come across. I completely understand what they're trying to do, but I think they could be so much better with a unique unit from medieval Scotland, as Scotland has such a rich history around that time, and they could be able to push their advantage, or have a different peak, or have something other than the golf course, or have it give different yields, or the war type could change, or whatever. But they just need more focus on the science and production. It's a good civ, it's a good base civ, that's why they're in B, but they are a little bit all over the place. Next up, how we have a civ that I have gone back and forth on making this list. They've gone up, they've gone down from this position, but I've decided with B, and that's Scythia. There are a plethora of amazing domination civs. Even some have passed already, like Samaria or Chandragupta, maybe even the Vikings, but Scythia kind of is this middle ground where she's not top tier, but can be exceptional on occasion. The healing for killing units, amazing. The Sucker Horse Archer is better than it was. It tanks. It has better melee strength now, so it's not pathetic, but it still has one range and is nothing on a Kashig, and can be easily countered. The double like cavalry units are fantastic and scale throughout the game, meaning if you have the science to output helicopters, then you're going to have a lot of helicopters. But still, that can be countered, and everything else is weak. Everything else about Scythia, I can barely remember anything else about Scythia. The Kurgan unique improvement is just bad. It's pushing them towards faith game, I guess, but there's no inherent bonuses to religion, and I usually find myself pushing so hard on conquest early to abuse Scythia's power that there's nothing really else to get, and other domination civs are just frankly better. So this is a decent civ, and again, like some of the other ones I've mentioned, can be game winning if you stomp 2, maybe 3 civs and just take that into any victory type. But besides that, they're just really quite lackluster. Naval civ, I feel like a lot of them are going to fall into here. We have Phoenicia. These are quite similar to Norway, but don't have the box them in play style of I have to play this one specific way and I can be amazing. Their unique unit is weaker than the Norwegian longship, and it can't pillage, but it's still decent, and it can help secure the early game unless you're against someone like Norway. You can still do the same things besides the raiding. You can just take an early city if you find someone on a coast, especially on an islands map. But their other abilities are what put them a tier above Norway. So the Cawthorn is excellent. It's just you produce ships faster than a normal docks. You can move the capital with a special project, which kind of ties into their other abilities, but you also get plus 50% sailor production, and that is crazy. I'm pretty sure it's 50, but that seems high now that I'm saying it. But if that is right, that's even, that's insane. That can stack with things like Ancestral Hall. I don't know if that makes it 100%, but, then there's policies that go with that. And they can just output cities so fast in the early game, as long as they get their harbours up first. Or you could even, you could get a few cities early. You can do anything. You could push for a Pantheon and get the free settler and extra border growth. You don't particularly want a religion, but you also wouldn't say no to it, I guess. But a free settler will just get you on this path faster. You can use people like, you can use governors like Liang or Magnus and his chops to get districts out faster. There's just a lot of things they can do. They also have the building government plazas, give them more traders, and it just works really well. And finally, they have the fact that any coastal cities on the continent or their capital remain 100% loyal, and this does lead to some cheeky strategies of settling on a different continent, moving your capital, and then you can just forward settle anyone along the coast because you will have no loyalty issues. I don't think it works for captured cities, but still it's quite a fun strategy and it's a lot of fun to do. But overall, this is a good, well-rounded civ that can easily play a naval domination game and have cities over the whole world before anyone else gets a second out. With the Mali, I was debating whether to put them in C or B tier, but when things go right for the Mali, they go really, really, really well, and it's stupidly broken. They can have a pretty rough start with the lack of production that they'll get from mines, and boosting things can be quite hard, and you're looking for that desert spawn for the ideal situation, which can be a drawback with production as well. But once you get the holy sites up with the Saguba district next to them, they're just going to make so much money. And then you're going to trade from whatever city has the most desert. You can get the University of, not going to pronounce that, the desert one, to get even more trade. You're just going to make literally thousands per turn, and it's going to be nuts. And then, if that wasn't enough, you're going to probably have a religion because you want to get the adjacencies for the Saguba district with holy sites, and through that you're going to be able to faith buy market buildings, so you won't need to hard produce them. You use faith and your religion to get your money, and then you use money to get everything else. So you don't need to worry about production if you can make it to that combination. They can be wiped out by any ancient era war civ, possibly even classical era war civ before they've got this running, but from that point you're just going to be a bank, and if you're against humans you'll just pay them off, or maybe even the AI. Yeah, just a very solid civ, but if you don't find that scenario, if you get wiped out, if you don't find the desert, if you don't find rivers, if it's just not going to be as good, or if you don't get a religion. There are a lot of things that need to go your way, but so strong if they do. Similarly, this one might be quite controversial, but I feel the same way as I feel about Scythia, and that's Hungary. They do have a ridiculous military game. The production from districts across rivers from the city, if you know what you're doing and you think about that and don't mess it up, because I have before, I thought it just meant across the river, but no, that's what's his face, that's Egypt. But if you get that set up right, that can be really strong. The thermal bath is kind of if you're going to put an extra geothermal fissure, if you can, it can be better, but it's quite late on in the game building in an entertainment complex, which you don't often build, but you can when going for a domination game, which kind of works for Hungary. The first unit, the Black Army, is ridiculously powerful, and the fact that they can levy city-state units for cheaper is also ridiculously powerful. And then the Black Army and the levied city-state units buff each other, and it's so strong. The Hussar is lacking. The strategy of going from a Black Army unit into a Hussar, the fact that they upgrade a unique unit into another, is very, very strong, and it's still decent, but you might as well be upgrading them into cavalry, because the way that Hungary is going to play, you're going to be killing whoever you can, whoever is near you, whoever was your neighbors at the start of the game with the Black Army. And the Hussar benefits from alliances. Unless you get some far-off alliances, people pretty much aren't going to like you by the time you've been using the Black Army for a few 100 turns or something. Not 100 turns, that's way too much. But the Hussars are quite lacking. So again, an excellent civ, but in the same way that Scythia is, in that they're kind of pushed all towards military conquest, but their synergy just isn't there. The production's nice, and the amenities are nice, but the synergy just isn't quite there. Finally, for B tier, we have the Ottomans. They are ridiculously powerful, and possibly overall the most powerful in B tier, but only in their spike, only in their power spike. They can be good at other times, but they could potentially be the strongest civ in the game in a specific time, which is probably the Renaissance to early industrial, I guess. Their unique unit, the Janissary, it's going to be costly because it costs population to make, but what you just want swordsmen or men-at-arms to push early, and then you get the mercenaries card to reduce upgrades, and they're basically free to upgrade at that point. And then you're going to bring your bombards out, or catapults, or trebuchets, whatever you're using at the time, because even trebuchets with the Janissaries, if you want to push it immediately because it's attack earlier, is still very strong, and everything's just going to do more damage. And then the cities that you do capture have loyalty. You've got the although it's an awkward building to get to, it's a bank replacement, it gives you amenities. There are just ways for them to consolidate their power and what they take. However, they are entirely one-dimensional, and although they do have a spawn bias to Niter, they heavily rely on it. They will just have to wait until they get this push. Sure, they get stronger catapults, trebuchets, siege weapons throughout the game, but that's it. It's just the siege weapons. So you can be absolutely stomped on as if you have no benefits until the Renaissance era. You're just a base civ with absolutely nothing until that point. So you've got to survive until your power spike. Moving into the B plus tier, you're going to have civs that just have that slight edge on those in B tier. Still not overpowered, but can be really strong in the right scenarios, or just generally good. And the first one that exemplifies that perfectly, that's Catherine's Black Queen persona for France. Now, it doesn't synergize as well, it doesn't make as much sense and flow into a nice culture civ, or abuse the culture like the other two France. personas, but you've got this incredible power that you can work alongside. It gives them diversity. It means they're not just a culture civ, but even with the culture victory, it can help there because you've got the spies and you've got the diplomatic visibility. You can find out what's going on. You can get extra combat strength. You can abuse the unique unit more, and it gives you a more maybe a domination focus, or you can use the spies to catch up if you're behind, or if you're you want to get into the medieval Renaissance era and get these wonders out, get these chateaus out, build up your culture. If you want to still play that culture game, you can use that to defend yourself if you're ahead or to catch up. Those spies are going to be incredible. They're going to be just having an extra one is just so powerful, and then you can combine it with intelligence agency, and you can just keep getting more and more spies. And with the policy cards in, they're just gonna be even stronger. So this makes this the strongest France, in my opinion, and the most diverse. Following this, we have the Kree. I haven't treated this civilization too well in the past. I've been ranking quite low, but I have, as of this tier list and with previous ones I've ranked so far, been reconsidering the power of early game compared to later in the game. The Kree just have a decently strong early game. They have nothing really that pushes them in any specific victory type, but they're kept versatile and useful with an early game advantage. Similar to the way the Indonesian Kampung works, they have the unique improvement, the Mekawap, or Mekawap, I don't know how to pronounce that, but they just get all the resources they'd need to build an early empire from. They're getting food, they're getting production, they're getting gold, and those things help them just to skyrocket in the early game. And unlike the Kampung, it can be built on land. They also have the unique unit, which is the only scout replacement I think is decent, because you get a free promotion on it, and that means you can explore really, really fast, even though there is extra production cost. And they're the same strength as warriors. I think it's the same strength, but they still seem weaker, but they're higher strength. They Their trade is great. If you get, I think it's with pottery, you get the free trade routes, so you can have early game 2 trade routes really, really quick off the bat, which isn't so beneficial if you don't find someone, but in the same vein as Netherlands or Egypt, you're going to have a really great early start with trade. Probably not as powerful as the Netherlands trade, but there's going to be more of it. They also have the alliance bonuses in sharing vision, and that's, to me, that's more of like, oh, you're playing with a human player and want to share vision, or you're wanting to abuse the vision of an AI, but it's still quite a fun mechanic. Their strong early game just sets them off, and their versatility that they have. They don't have any boost to specific victory conditions, but the versatility they have in the early game and the lead they can get can push them in the direction of any victory type. Next up, we have the Aztecs. They're an incredibly strong early game conquest civ, possibly the best conquest civ and the most terrifying opponent you can come up against in the ancient era, possibly excluding Sumeria's war carts, but still, their Eagle Warrior units can be spam produced, and that's something you're going to want to do, because when you're at war with non-barbarian civilizations, so either city-states or civilizations, when you kill their units, you have a chance of grabbing a builder with their unique unit, which is naturally stronger than the warrior anyway. They also get combat strength on all of their units throughout the whole game, based on the amount of amenities improved, and they have a unique building that helps them with amenities. I think it's an arena replacement. It gives them great general points, and it gives them faith, and their amenities are just used more effectively. And this all sets you up for an incredible early game. It's not the same way in that China would have one, or the Kree would have one, but if you abuse early war, you don't have to go through domination playstyle with this guy, because the amount of builders you're going to generate... Oh, and the other thing, the builders can be used similarly to Queen's China, boosting wonders with builder charges. You can boost districts with builder charges as the Aztecs. So you're going to spam out builders, and they're just going to build your cities up so quickly. All the improvements, all the districts. You're going to, yes, have to hard commit to Eagle Warrior building in the early game, but you're going to make up for the production that you've lost out on by having this mass army of builders and having an early game start to this. Even if you don't kill the first civ that you meet or first city-state you meet, you can just farm builders off them and build up your city incredibly to have an early game as good as China. But what makes them even more powerful is that they are inclined for a domination game throughout the game, because you're going to have these extra amenities and all your units are going to be getting stronger, and you'll have the early extra cities for production.
Amazing music tracks.
Next, we have Spain, who was once the weaker colonization civ and just a pretty lackluster faith domination civ, and now has a proper fleshed out personality. They're not as strong as Byzantium in the terms of a faith domination game, but they're so much better than someone like Poland. But they do eclipse civs like England in their colonization ability now, in my opinion, because you have this buff that's added: stronger colonization with free builder, bonus district production, stronger mission yields, and triple yields for trade that goes cross continents. It's just so powerful when you get overseas cities. Well, not just overseas, but over continents. And they also, on top of all of this, have a spawn bias for continent splits. So you could settle your capital and be able to have your second city immediately with these insane yields. It does mean the Spanish capital isn't always going to be the strongest thing, and especially if you have this continent split idea, your next few cities on a different continent are going to be more powerful. But again, there's not really an issue with that as long as you can somewhat protect your capital. These cities are just going to be so powerful, and it makes you not just a faith civ, not just a domination civ, not just a trade civ, not just a colonization civ. There's so much going on with Spain now. They're so rounded and like a complete package. Not overpowered, because what they have, other people can do it better. So I'd say even Phoenicia can colonize at least faster than Spain can because of the settler production. And we'll see where Byzantium comes further up the list soon, but they can do the faith domination game better. But Spain is now a very, very well-rounded civ, and I'm much happier with them than I used to be. Then we have Australia. So they have their coastal settling, which, with a coastal spawn bias, will give them fresh water from coast settles. They have appeal into adjacency bonuses for districts. Their unique unit does come quite late in the game, but it's still really powerful when you get it, but not as powerful as earlier unique units for their time and how you can expand with them. They can be really powerful when well planned, because if you can force a defensive war, you can get that plus 100% production boost, and it's just really powerful. And you don't even have to be playing a domination game. In fact, sometimes not, if you would be the one declaring the war often if you're in a domination game, whereas with this civ you can focus on science or culture or any other kind of victory type, and you just got to provoke someone enough to get into a war with you, or be an ally with someone so that you can be in a defensive war. So you get that production boost to help you with whatever victory type you're going with. Finally, they have their Outback Station, which, in my opinion, is the best part of them, because, like farms, after feudalism, they are self-stacking. So they're powerful adjacent to pastures, as it is, but they don't require the pastures to be powerful, because as long as you've got flat land, their bonuses, their production, their food, it's all going to come from being adjacent to pastures and their own buildings. And as you go through the tech tree, that's just going to get more and more powerful. And these self-stacking unique improvements are really, really quite powerful in the same way that putting farms together is. Following the Aztecs, we have Genghis Khan's Mongolia as another kind of mid-tier domination civ. They do horses just way better than most other civs, and better than Hungary, better than Scythia, which is why I've put them in this higher tier. Possibly not better than other horse civs, but we'll come to them in a sec. They have stronger horses naturally. They can capture horses, which makes them a good anti-horse unit, so they can counter Scythia's mass production really easily with the chance to capture them. Their unique unit is a better Saka horse archer because it has extra range. Their unique building gives +1 movement to all cavalry trained there, meaning you can get their unique unit up to 5 move speed, which if you link it with any civilian units, like a settler, you can get the same move speed on that. Their unique ability of the diplomatic visibility is very powerful. Naturally, civs get extra combat strength based on diplomatic visibility, but the Mongolians take this and have it much, much higher. So even when your initial power spike of the Kashyyyks comes to a close, you'll then start getting spies, and you can spy on the potential enemies, who's going to be your next target, and weaken them, soften them up. And then when you go in to fight them, you'll have all this extra combat strength to help you out. And just overall, a very strong civ, but doesn't have anything outside of the realm of domination. Babylon is a really, really odd civ to rank, and possibly the hardest in this whole list to rank, but I've decided to rank them in B+, because in a similar way to Norway and the Vikings, the idea of a certain strategy does make them ridiculously powerful. They should be a science civ the way they're geared, and they do have ridiculous science in the sense that they have no science, but they get techs for free with boosts. But that's not going to be consistent into the late game. The late game techs are way harder to boost, and if you haven't got the right wonders, if you haven't got the right great people generation, it's just not going to be enough. Their extra building from district is fantastic. Their unique building is fantastic. Even their unique unit helps scouting faster, but Babylon is missing something like, I don't know, early production, or just something to get them going, something early game to really boost them. And their unique building sort of does that, and I guess their scouting can help, but they just need something to help them get to wonders, because they need wonders. If you can get the Great Library, that's fantastic. If you can get, if you can get other science library wonders, if you can get anything to generate great people points, and more specifically anything to generate great scientist points, you are absolutely set. This is the most broken civ ever for science if you can generate great scientist points. The alternative, the strategy though, that seems more applicable is, if you can't do this perfect science game, you can just rush the military techs, which is quite easy to boost, and you can just completely overwhelm a neighbor as a domination civ. You can play Babylon, in my experience, better as a domination civ than as a science civ. You rush musketmen, bombards, and just absolutely trample your enemies, and that's it. And then what, you're going to build 3 musketmen and bam, you've got infantry, or 3 line infantry and you've got infantry. I don't know if that's changed yet, but they can just absolutely steamroll someone with the tech boosts. They can just be quite held back by, for example, if you don't have stone or marble where you spawn, you're not going to boost masonry, so you're not going to get it for free, and you're going to have to hard produce that with half the science of any normal civ, and that goes the same for any resource-based or spawn-based tech boosts. Another sort of sciencey civ, we have Portugal, who I was literally going to put them in the tier above. I was literally going to put them in A tier, but I've had a last-minute swap around as of recording Babylons, and they're just... I've had some experience with them now where they haven't got this perfect location. In the perfect location, they're easily S tier because your trade works internationally, and on an islands map, you're going to dominate, even on a continents map, even potentially on a Pangaea map, but not so much. However, I was playing on a highlands map, I think, recently, and I spawned my capital on an inland sea. And that's it. Pretty much all of Portugal's strength's gone. So this is the new Venice. This is the ultimate trade civ. This is the greatest. But if you're on you do have a coastal spawn bias, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be on an outer coast that connects to other civilizations' islands. You could be in a large lake that is considered the sea, or you could be in a sea that doesn't have any other civilizations connected to it. And then your whole strategy, I guess, is kind of hoping someone settles that. And if it's quite near you, you're not going to want that anyway. So this civ is incredible if with the right start. You get the science you get from coastal tiles, the nows and the feitorias, who would just going to bring in so much gold and production. The trade is just absolutely psychotic, but it's so situational. But again, I do have to put them in B plus tier because this service easily S tier when it goes right. Finally, in B plus, we have the Maya, and I promise I'm not putting all of the science civs here. They just happen to have all come together. They are an incredibly unique civ, possibly second to the play style of the Maori or Babylon, because they're just it's just a lot of fun to play when you get that right start in a similar way to Portugal and how I've just explained that. They're really, really powerful. There's a specific city settling map that you can find online that shows the perfect placement of the Mayan cities to get all their bonuses, to get the free builder, the extra yields, everything from being near the capital. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen all too often. In a lot of scenarios, sure, in some scenarios you get a capital near the coast, that's fantastic, but not as the Maya, because you're just going to lose out on a whole direction of cities. If there's a sea to your east, you're going to not be able to put eastern cities down unless you move your capital a lot. And then they also need flat land, either plains or grassland, to be able to put farms down, because they don't get freshwater housing. You have to put farms to get housing, although they do give gold, which is great. They also give a slight adjacency to their unique campus. I think it's 2 farms as 1 science, and plantations give 2 science for the campus adjacency as well. And your spawn bias will usually lead you to an area that you would have plantation locations and flatland, but that's not going to be the same for all of your cities, and sometimes you will just get the luxuries because you're inclined to spawn near them anyway, as most civs are. But your capital and your cities get extra amenities from being adjacent to luxury, so you have another settling condition. There are just a lot of conditions. When things go well, they go really well, but their unique campus doesn't get science from mountains or science from rainforests. It's only from these farms and plantations, which when you get it, you can get easily +4, maybe even +6 campuses. But it's not always going to happen, and the conditions are just too high. There are just too many things that you need to go right. Their unique unit's pretty good too, but as a science civ goes, they're great if you get the right spawn, but they can be absolutely screwed over by spawn.
Amazing music tracks.
Moving up into A tier, we have Gorgo's Greece. They've been buffed a little with their military policy cards giving them combat strength, so there is a slight domination edge, but it's not too much, but it does work for their early game culture from kills to farm the civics and get to an early government. And as I've rated early game before with China and with the Aztecs and that sort of stuff, getting the early culture can be really, really powerful and really beneficial to help Gorgo shoot ahead of the pack and get an early lead. The hoplite isn't great because it's a anti-cavalry tree unique unit, but it's still decent if you get a few of them next to each other. That's very strong, but on their own, they are still quite weak. Their extra wildcard slot is also fantastic because it means you can go for an early religion, or it means you can go for early great scientist points because of mysticism. Usually you can't use mysticism until you get a government, but they can also just use that slot for an extra economic or military policy card, which works perfectly if it's military, fitting in with Gorgo's extra combat strength. And then finally you got the Acropolis, which is just a decent all-round thing. And the reason I'm putting these guys here is because compared to Pericles, the synergy is slightly missing. Pericles has slightly nicer synergy in that Gorgo's envoys aren't going on to give her more benefits compared to Pericles and envoys, because she's going to get the envoys from building the Acropolis, and the Acropolis just seems to synergize better with the other version of Greece. Next up, we have Rome, and I'm sure a lot of you are glad to see that they are in this tier now. I'm sure some people will still say they want them higher, but I have been playing around with them and have recognized their powers more since trying out strategies like the like Magnus and the chopping out repeated legions. There's just so much you can do, and the early game strength, similar to Civs I've said before, getting a monument for free is going to get you the government quicker. It's going to get you everything quicker. It's going to get you up the culture tree and stay decently ahead on culture until people start pumping out theatre squares, and you can even choose to do that yourself, or you can turn this early culture start, this early boost to your civilization and getting a government into domination game, into a science game, into even a faith game if you wanted. There's just so many directions to go with Rome, and it's probably the best civ to pick up if you're new to the game, because they're just the base civ with buffs. The aqueducts, the bath is just better. Their legionaries are just better warriors that can have a build charge, and the roads leading to Rome mean your units are going faster, well, sort of a little bit naturally without having to send a trade route, and you're going to get the extra gold from trading posts. They're just base civ plus benefits. I've complained about them a lot in the past because I would like to see like another leader with them, considering there are thousands upon thousands of very cool characters to choose from. But I do think that Trajan's Rome overall is a very good civ. One of my personal favourites, we have the Mapuche, and they are absolutely excellent, and they've had a buff. They were more their culture side of things, the unique improvement, the Chemomul, or Chemomul, I'm not sure, was a little weak, but the extra production it gives now makes it a better improvement. It's still not the best part of their kit, but it's better than it was, and now getting them up can help you produce things, which plays into their other stuff. The other stuff is mostly domination based, and you're just going to be better against attacking people who are doing better than you, in the sense of being in a golden age while you're in a dark age, or being in a golden age while you're in a normal age, or whatever. Just attacking someone in a golden or heroic age is always going to go better for you. And their unique unit can help disrupt things with loyalty in a similar way that Eleanor's France can, but in a more active way than a passive way. So you can just kill units in the surrounding cities in an attempt to flip them. Their unique unit helps with this, the Malon Raider, and is very strong near home territory, which as you expand your land, home territory is going to increase each time. So it's not linked to a continent like Teddy's Rough Rider. You can expand where your strength is, which makes sense for a domination game. Your cities get an extra 5% culture, 5% production, and 10% combat experience for units trained there when they have a governor in them. And if these cities weren't originally yours, those bonuses are tripled. So in combination with your military game, or even if you want to use your military game and then go culture afterwards, which is still very doable, especially if you can get the Eiffel Tower, you're just going to have a very strong game either way. The bonuses for like the unique unit do come in the kind of mid-game section, but the Chemomul can help you get ahead in culture, get that early bit of culture. It's very situational. You're going to find a breathtaking tile without any managing of a city, without any placement of districts or wonders that improve appeal. But besides that point, if you get a point that you can put a Chemomul down, you'll be more powerful and get those early governments, and that can help you snowball into the rest of the game, where you're a very powerful civ at taking down civs in the height of their golden ages. Following this, we have the absolutely terrifying Alexander's Macedonia, and in terms of the sheer fear it instills into me, this is S tier, because this civ is absolutely terrifying. It's just not as versatile and is kind of pigeonholed into a domination civ, but not as much in the sense that Scythia or Mongolia or the Aztecs are, because they can capture cities, which will give them tech and civic boosts based on the districts that were in them, and producing soldiers does give them percentage science, which isn't much, but it's still something to give them a little edge in a different direction other than domination. As for their domination, it's absolutely terrifying, it's just so powerful, and in the classical to early medieval era, they'll just kill everything, and then from there, could keep going. I think, in my opinion, this is the most annoying and potentially strongest multiplayer civ because you can just forever war someone and it's actually effective because war weariness isn't going to affect you. So you can literally just screw anyone over. You may not have the best game yourself, but you can sit on someone's border and just pepper them anytime they come past and war them for the whole game, pillage them with horses, whatever. You can just make their life hell, and as long as you don't commit to it, well, you might want to, but if you're just being annoying and don't want to commit to anything, you can just be safe with your units, and that's it. He's just so strong in the classical era. It does drop off a little bit because he's not got anything unique past that point, but with an early start, you're going to be strong either way. In a similar manner, we have Shaka Zulu next, and this was possibly the most fitted civ in Civ 5, and they kind of uphold their position, not extremely, but in terms of sheer domination, power, and prowess, this could be the best domination civ for just domination. They do have what puts them in the same category as Macedonia and above Mongolia, in that their buildings in their unique encampment district give gold and science now, which does give them something in a different direction other than domination. But mainly with this civ, it's impies, cores, armies, dead. That's it. That's the game plan. You're gonna get cores for free by killing cities. With a unit that's not a core, the impies are incredibly cost efficient. They're a spearman replacement, not spearman, pikeman replacement, but they're still ridiculously strong, and with enough of them, you're going to absolutely run over everyone and then just turn your soldiers into more soldiers. And if you're playing secret societies and have vampires fighting alongside you, matching the combat strength of the armies that you're making, early on, they're going to wipe everything out, and then vampire castles mean you're just going to produce armies and cores even faster. It's so powerful, but still a little one-dimensional. Moving on, we have Vietnam. I've quite enjoyed playing this civ since it's come out, and their ideas of taking the rainforest bias, like Brazil and Congo have, and making it just better than even Brazil can, in my opinion, because you've got the working on forest, rainforest, and marsh tiles with your district placement. Then they have their unique district, which is a campus that doesn't take away from the allowed specialty districts, so you can put them in every city without consuming a slot, and they get cultural adjacency from other districts. So they just work really well with the whole idea of placing the districts in the respective locations, and because you're not actually technically destroying the resource, destroying the forest, destroying the marsh, destroying the rainforest, you don't need the technology like bronze working, so this really takes advantage of the situation a lot of jungle spawn biases can find themselves stuck in. Their unique unit is ridiculously powerful and a lot of fun, but still maybe only the second best elephant unit. They just generate a lot of science, a lot of production, a lot of culture, and can be taken in any direction. They're really quite versatile. You can go faith, there's no inherent bonuses to faith, but you could do faith if you wanted to, but you have bonuses to science, bonuses to culture, bonuses to production, bonuses to domination, and you can just run with it, whether you want to use your encampments aggressively or defensively, because you're going to have them in every city anyway. Another well-rounded civ, Ethiopia, joins A tier. They have a very specific condition for being strong, and that is settling all their cities on hills. Cities that are settled on hills are going to give you science and culture from 15% of that city's faith output, which is immensely strong, as it allows you to focus on producing as much faith as you physically can, and just generating science and culture for it. Obviously, you could play a science game and rush a campus, or play a culture game and rush a theatre square, or whatever, but you'll probably earn the same amount as other civs doing that by going holy site first, and from the faith that you generate, as long as you've settled on a hill, you're going to be strong. The rock-hewn church is pretty decent. It gives faith and then tourism, and it's based on adjacent hills and mountains. The unique unit is okay, it's faster and stronger in hills, but it's I guess. You can clearly see that the Secret Society's Void Singers were perfectly made for this Civ, but in the base game they can still be incredibly, incredibly strong. They have some inclination to play with culture, going down the archaeology route, as they can faith purchase the building and archaeologists, but they're just a good all round faith civ that is allowed to transition into other victory types.
Music tracks.
Finishing off A tier, we have the Incans, a mountainous civ that can work mountains for production and extra food if there is their unique terrace farm adjacent to it, and those terrace farms get more food and work as a farm and get even more food for being adjacent to mountains, which kind of doubles up with the other ability, and production if next to an aqueduct and fresh water, which can really boost the amount of production and food this civilization can make. Their trade routes get food for mountains in the origin city. Builders can make a mountain passage to travel through them, which usually requires very late game technology. Their unique unit is part of the scout tree, so isn't particularly strong, and I don't really rate units of the recon tree anyway, but their other bonuses make them so strong. Initially, I've been inclined to play science with the Civ because of the mountainous spawn and just abuse the production and food they can get to build big cities and output as much science as possible. But recently I've also tried them with preserves because mountains will have such a high appeal. Incans can actually get yields from them, so you can build a preserve surrounded by mountains, and that will work. That will basically give you all of the preserve yields plus any bonus production you're getting from the mountains, and it can be really, really powerful. So they can play a science game, they can play a culture game, they could play a faith game with mountain adjacency. It's no inherent bonuses to it, but they're very strong. Or they could abuse their
Music tracks.
lead to potentially go domination, but they are quite a reserved, peaceful, built up in protection civilization. Moving on to the A tier plus, some of these are just missing out on S, but S is going to be a class above the rest. So these are very, very strong civs in their own right. And the first one is Pericles' Greece. Now, I've mentioned all the points that make Greece strong when talking about Gorgo back in the start of A tier, but Greece, as I mentioned then, has a better synergy with the Acropolis bonuses of getting envoys when you build them. The way that they synergize with themselves makes more sense, so I'm just going to rank them higher anyway. In the early game, they are slightly weaker than Gorgo, because Gorgo's ability to farm culture is just stronger and comes online earlier, but it's going to be eclipsed quickly, especially going into the late game with Pericles' Greece, because the extra envoys are going to mean you can get suzerain as soon as possible. Once you start getting suzerain, you're getting that extra 5% culture on your total, which may not be much at the start, but again, will be about as much as you're getting from killing units as Gorgo. It's just going to come maybe one era after. So Pericles does have a weaker start than Gorgo, but once you get going, and especially into the late game, the envoys that you're going to turn into percentage culture on a massive culture anyway, if you're playing that type of game, is just going to generate you so much culture and therefore so much tourism, and he's just such a strong civ for those reasons.
Music tracks.
Next up we have Japan, and this, in a similar sense to how Rome works, is just a great all-round civ, but I think slightly better than Rome. They have the combat strength for being near the coast, both with boats and with land units. They have the samurai, which now replace men-at-arms and aren't somewhere awkward on the tech tree. And you can upgrade them into musket men, which is very strong, so you can abuse them at the height of their power and actually have some domination power, which synergizes well with their encampment being built quicker, which I've never really understood before now. They can also build holy sites and theatre squares faster, which allows them to play quite a cultural game and potentially get a religion, as you do have a boost to getting it faster with being able to build a district faster, similar to how Russia does it, but obviously not as strong in a faith game. They want you to play tall and grow in clusters. They want your cities to be quite clustered together. You can still play wide, but you don't want to forward settle. You don't want to settle far apart because that you want to cluster your stuff together because their districts get a major adjacency bonus off each other rather than a minor one, which can boost the adjacencies really high. And this combines well with their electronics factory, which gives culture and production bonus to surrounding cities. So you want your industrial zones in the middle and surrounding them with your other districts. You can play any game type, everything is kind of applicable, everything is versatile. The only direct bonus they don't have is to science, but you can still get that with the adjacency bonuses that you're going to get from districts, but they have direct bonuses to domination, culture, and faith. So a very, very well-rounded civ. Next up we have the Chimera, and this is a civ that I was so close to putting in S tier. They are just so strong, but I'll explain, I think, when it comes to S tier, why they're not up there and why the civs that are there are there. Chimera was already pretty decent and already the best tall civ in the game, kind of only being challenged potentially by Maya, but they can be screwed over by spawn location. They have been buffed to get culture based on population through their unique building, which is incredibly powerful as you're planning to go tall anyway. As long as you get a river and some grassland to put farms down, you're going to get River Goddess if you can as a pantheon, which will make your holy sites even stronger than they already are, and you'll just surround it with farms and aqueducts, and you can build up your empire as any other civ from that point with a ridiculous population and play the tall game. You can have loads of faith, you have a unique unit that can just siege down cities and is the best elephant unit in the game, I've decided. And you also you have so many abilities that just link in with each other. You can go faith, you can go culture. It's very easy to do both. You have a domination aspect, and if you wanted to, you could play tall science, but the others just make more sense. They're just immensely, immensely strong, but they just kind of lack that snowball element that I think would put them into the S tier. They don't get going immediately, and even at the height of their power, they're only on par with Pericles' Greece, which still makes them immensely strong, but not strong enough for S tier. Pound for pound, Korea is the best science civ in the game. That doesn't mean they're the best civ in the game that's suited towards a science victory, as production also plays a key element, and I will be putting someone higher for that. I'm sure it's not easy to guess who that will be, but for actually producing science, Korea is the best civ for that purpose. They are a little dependent on hills, but only as much as Pericles and Gorgo are, and Pericles is in this tier as a very high tier culture civ, in the same way that Korea is a very high tier science civ. They can absolutely snowball, not enough to put them into S, but they can really snowball from their position, getting that +4 immediately, and being able to plan the cities out. If you don't know what you're doing, this civ is going to be awful because you're going to surround the campus, but without surrounding the campus, placing farms next to it, placing mines next to it, you're going to get incredible yields and very fast science. And then you have your unique unit, which can help you defend, governors that add science and culture for each promotion, gives you not only more science, but the cultural aspect that this civ can be missing. Just a very, very well-rounded science civ. Moving on to a really well-rounded civ, the Gauls. They just have lots of different things that other civilizations that I've ranked lower have, and come together to make a very strong, well-rounded civ. They're like the Aztecs in terms of their early combat. They're like other civs like Germany or Japan in terms of the production they can output at times, or the Kree. They can produce culture, not to a high effectiveness, but in the early game, similar to how Gorgo would, they just have a lot of what it takes to make a very strong civ. So The culture from mines, again, as an early culture boost, you can get to governments quickly. You also have a unique unit that can go around killing barbarians. Units you produce are going to give you a little bit of culture, so that's similar to Alexander's bonus, but more well-rounded and fitting in with the culture idea. And that early on is going to be even more powerful in helping you get governments. They're just really, really powerful because then you get their unique district, the Oppidum, which is a defensible district. So, in the same way, you can be very defensive like Vietnam, but it's a production district. It's the industrial replacement that you're going to get much earlier. And upon completing it, you'll unlock the apprenticeship tech, which will give you men at arms immediately off the bat, so that you can just upgrade them and rush and run at an enemy. And on top of that, all your land non-mounted units are giving each other combat strength for being adjacent next to each other. So it's a domination, it's a potential production into science or culture civ. It has so much going for it. The only thing it's slightly missing is a religious game, but even with production that they get early on, you can go and transfer into that if you really wanted to. But just a really, really well-rounded civ that can be absolutely terrifying in the same way that the Aztecs do, yet transitions so well throughout all stages of the game. With Poland and Georgia being the worst examples, and the Spain being a pretty decent, if not strong example, Byzantium is the strongest faith domination civ in the game. Yes, I've seen a lot of people say that they are absolutely worthless and not playing if they don't get their religion. I still disagree with this slightly, because their unique unit and the fact that they're getting free copies upon entertainment complex buildings and the district building itself is ridiculously powerful. But they do have a boost to getting a religion as well, which inherently not many civs have. Trying to get a religion against the deity AI is difficult, but if any civs can do it, it's going to be civs like Russia or Greece or Byzantium that have bonuses to getting great profit points faster, or even Japan building that holy site quicker is what matters. That building the holy site as fast as physically possible, or by slotting in a card that's going to generate great profit points. That's the best way to get a religion as fast as you can, unless you can rush Stonehenge or pump out the city project. Their other abilities just all synergize so well. Once you have a religion, once you have your power spike, or even before that, you can just steamroll someone by spamming entertainment complexes and just having an infinite army. You can build one before to prepare. You can build other units to field your vast army that is mostly going to be filled up with heavy cavalry the second those entertainment complexes pop up. So you can prepare the early game by focusing, getting a religion, and from that point just building an army up and getting cities out, and then just going for it once you have it. If you get monumentality, I haven't mentioned this for other civs yet, but if you get monumentality, you're going to be even stronger. You can push your own conquest and forward settle people, and it's going to be ridiculously powerful. That goes for any faith-based civ getting monumentality, but I find it with Byzantium and Russia, it's just even more powerful. They just get so much combat strength, both religiously and in a military sense, for going up against someone with a religion, or going up against someone generally. Sometimes it can be a strategy to just not get a religion if Byzantium's in the game. I mean, you don't want no one to have a religion, but also if they take yours out, they're going to be converting you by killing your units. And if they take yours out, your holy city, they're going to be even stronger. So if you're on the doorstep of Byzantium, a religion isn't always the best idea, because you're just going to buff them for later. They're just so immensely strong and will just walk over everything. Their biggest drawback is their unique unit, the Droman, because you're not often going to get a coastal start, and it's not really what you're geared towards anyway. If you have to find yourself building a harbour district, you're wasting slots that can be used for science to get you ahead, culture to get you to the Tagma as soon as possible, and holy sites and entertainment complexes, that sort of thing. But if your capital happens to be on the coast, it's not a drawback to have that unique unit. It's just the weakest part of what is amazing abilities. It's a really strong ship. It just seems small compared to all the million overpowered things they have. However, like others, this is a very one-dimensional civ. If you can kite them, if you can avoid them, if you can build up and build a defensible wall, you can just eclipse them in science or culture because they're going to be focusing so heavy on the other victory types. Concluding a plus tier, we have Gran Colombia. This is probably the strongest domination civ in the game. They're a bit more one-dimensional and don't have the faith aspect like Byzantium, but I think would beat Byzantium in a pound-for-pound fight. They are just so strong, and it does take them a while for their unique units to come online, but they do have strengths before then, and they have a lot of advantages. The most important is the fact that they've literally made a mod. There are several mods that exist to do this to all civs, and that is you are allowed to move and promote. And also, your units all get extra movement speed, and that includes civilian units. So, right off the bat, your settler could move faster. So, you may usually, as a civ, need to move one tile to settle, and then you're behind by one turn. And yeah, maybe it's not a big deal, but it can be in some very high pressure and high difficulty games. But you don't have to do that. And all your settlers are going to get that. All your workers are going to move faster. All your units are going to be able to get anywhere faster. And you can run away and promote in the same turn. You can promote and then attack. Like, it's ridiculously strong. That's such a strong ability. The fact that you can heal your unit and give it extra combat strength and attack with it. It is so important to do that with not just melee units, not just with the cavalry that they'll be using, but especially with ranged and siege units, because you often find yourself, if you're attacking a city, say you're consuming the turn, you're not going to like run away or lose your position like you would with a cavalry or melee unit. You're going to want to stay on the spot and shoot, but you say you get your bombards being attacked by the city, and you're going to be like, oh, I now have to promote this, or I have to run it away, and I won't be able to fire if I choose to do either of those things. Well, you can promote and then fire, and you're probably going to go down the promotion tree of either of following down either getting the first promotion of more defensible, or the second promotion of more damage to cities, which are both beneficial in that scenario, and you're healing it up at the same time. It's just so powerful, and that is, I've talked for that long about one of their abilities. Their unique unit is ridiculously strong. It does take a while to come online, but it is really powerful. They have these unique generals as well, not in the same way that there are great people, and I do find using great people with Gran Colombia is a little weaker in the terms of great generals, because you have these amazing generals. There's better generals than the base great generals in the game, and they just have ridiculous abilities. I couldn't summarize them all, but it's like heal everything, damage everything, buff this unit forever to be overpowered, give all light cavalry better attacks, and they also passively, those are the active effects, they also passively boost movement speed and attack, which on top of what was already strong, it's just even stronger. They also have a unique infrastructure placement. I can't remember the name of it, but the unique infrastructure placement, similar to how I've ranked Australia, and their outback station stacks with itself. I think it stacks, I think it benefits from adjacent plantations, and then again with itself, and it upgrades through the tech tree. So if you can get large areas of these, you're going to be producing culture, you're going to be producing food and production and gold. I don't think it's culture. Yeah, but it is all just so strong. It's ridiculously strong, and yeah, you'll just steamroll actually anyone. Maybe if the Byzantines have had a particularly good start and already conquered someone, or got loads of entertainment complexes, or abused monumentality, yes, you can get overrun because you are quite one-dimensional. And at no other point have I put other one-dimensional civs. This is one-dimensional civs is usually in the A kind of tier, where I've ranked people like the Zulus and Macedonia, but or even down in B plus with Genghis Khan. But this is such a powerful domination civ, and it doesn't even have to just be that, because your unique improvement and the fact that all your units, including civilian units like settlers, can move faster, mean that you can set yourself up early for any victory type by settling everywhere, by sending your workers faster. It's just a good all-round civ that becomes even stronger in domination as time goes on.
Amazing music track.
Finally, in S tier, we only have 3 civs left to rank. 2 are very obvious, and 1 is going to be controversial, but it's kind of based on experience, so I've just had really, really good experience. But anyway, first we have Russia. Russia's stupid. Russia's broken.
Amazing.
It's just so powerful. It's like, hey, we took everything that was good about Canada, and sure, maybe Canada now thrives better in tundra, as I said when I was talking about Canada, but they also don't really function or have anything when they're not in tundra. So, Russia's just all of that and more. It's just so good. The lava is faster at building, so you're going to get great profit points. You can kind of lock yourself in for a religion, even though, yes, it can be hard on higher difficulties like deity, but a civ that has a bonus to it is always going to do well. The only issue I've had with them in the past, and I've said this pretty much every tier list, is that they're broken but annoying to play as, because they get overcrowded by great people, especially great musicians, because the lava starts outputting those when they will be nowhere near the building to hold them. But this has slightly been addressed, and it was like their only flaw to an already S tier civ, in that now each building you build in the lava district gives you respectively great writer points, great artist points, and great musician points. So you won't be as bombarded. You won't, from the second you start generating great profit points, also be generating great musician points. You're still probably going to run into a similar issue, but you're not going to have lands filled with musicians, and you'll be able to use them more efficiently. And then everything else is just really strong. The unique unit, the Cossack, is really, really powerful because you can just hit and run with it. And the trading internationally, giving science and culture based on how far behind you are, it means you can focus and rush a faith-based game, even a faith-based domination game, though it's not inclined that way. You could rush either 2 of those victory types and still have inclinations to the science and culture victory type, because you're able to trade with people, and in combination with spies, even if you're behind early on, you're going to catch up. So they're just a complete package. They have something for every victory type, and also probably the strongest faith victory type civ, and additionally, you don't even have to be faith victory type, because you can just get monumentality with the Golden Age, and just buy a million settlers, which are going to have huge borders anyway, and just take up all the land. It's just, everything's good. It's stupid. It's an easy game. Nice. Now comes the task of convincing you that Teddy's Bull Moose persona for America is S tier. I understand a lot of people would rank this A or A+, and the main drawback for them would be that spawn can be a little issue to his benefits, in that you can settle your city in somewhere like jungle, or even worse, because you can change jungle floodplains, which you can't change, and that's going to lower appeal. So you're not going to get these hyper early game insane bonuses that make him S tier for me. However, I have played that, and that was the first time I tried out this civ, when it came out, and I was still able to, by the medieval era, using preserves and wonder placement and district placement, up my appeal so that I was getting 4 culture from tiles, I was getting 2 science from those tiles, I was getting lots of food from those tiles, and able through the preserve and appeal system to really output a lot of science and culture like he can do. And that is worst case scenario, and in that case I would rank him A or A+, in his worst case. In his best case, or even medium, as long as you don't get floodplains and maybe don't get jungle, it's gonna go well. And if you get mountains, it's just a dream. The second game I played with him, I had the mountain spawn, and that was it. That was the game. I'd won the game. The reason I'm not putting him in A or A plus is because I'm putting the civs in S. That I've just felt so far ahead that I can't lose. And yes, I've felt that with some in A+. You can feel that with any civ. But from the get-go, when I spawn as Russia, I'm like, right, brilliant, tundra spawn, hills, we've got production, we've got lava out, we found a natural wonder. These things just snowball you, and you can secure the win, or like think you've secured the win within the first 10-20 turns. And America, that game where everything went right, or even a game I've played since where I just had grassland with a mountain or two, it was just so powerful having early culture and early science, and then using the preserves to boost that up and up. You're going to get your government earlier, you're going to advance your detectory earlier. No, it's not going to be as good as Korea with science. No, it's not going to be as good with maybe Pericles with culture. But it definitely will be after a while, and once those preserves are up, and you're just going to get an early lead in both the science and culture trees, and you're just going to be ahead. And then the national parks come around, and all you got to do is make sure you can find a location to plop one down in each city, and the appeal's going to go up. You don't need to build tile improvements. I found myself, I don't know whether I was doing this for the theme, but I found myself first making an industrial city with like my 6th or 7th city when I settled New York, which was, I felt like I had to, and because I didn't really have too much production until the later preserves came online. But I also had some jungle tiles within enough appeal, so I was getting production. That can be a downfall to them, but you can go around that. You can put the industrial zones or your mines far away from the appeal. You can put them further away from where you're planning your preserves. If you don't have mountains, sometimes that can be better because you have more room to work with. The preserves are going to give you the appeal you need anyway. This civ is just so snowbally. You get that dream start, you get that okay start, and you're just away. You're just ahead of everyone already. And you can just transfer that into the late game. You know, they have their film studios that will come later, and they'll just help you win a culture game very easily. But you could even transfer it to science. You could abuse it. You could abuse the early civics and techs and go domination in a similar vein to Babylon. Not as extreme, but you could go anywhere with this. You could do religiously because you're going to want those anyway to boost your appeal. This civ is so strong, and I've at least attempted to convince people to think that it belongs in S tier with Russia. And who comes next? Sandwiching that controversial opinion in two safe ones, we have Germany following this, and my opinions, like Russia, have not changed on Germany whatsoever. They're just nuts. It's so much production, and it's like Japan on steroids, or the Gaul on steroids, which has a unique industrial zone district of its own, and this one's even better. They're just going to be producing so much. They kind of have a game plan from the get-go, which allows you to go from an early game domination civ with an extra policy card and extra damage against city-states. Maybe you won't be going against civs, but you'll take out the nearby city-state or city-states, which gives you an early boost in the similar vein to how you would do with the Aztecs. But you can then transfer that into the Hansa, keep going with the domination, because the production's going to help you that way, or go in for a science, which obviously works well with the production, or you can play a culture or a faith game if you wanted, but domination into science or full domination or just science can be really powerful as you turn that production into whatever your empire needs. You can make a way stronger empire, you can produce things really fast, you can go first district Hansa in new cities you're settling. It's really strong. On top of that, every city's allowed one extra district than they can usually build, so that allows Hansas everywhere, pretty much. You want them in every city, and screw conserving power. Their unique unit, the U-boat, is really powerful, but they don't really have any preference to coast, you are going to use it when you get to it, and you'll get to it pretty quick if you're doing the science one, and you can use that to push domination again in a similar way to how you did in the early game, but it's not, it's just a cherry on top of the pretty damn awesome cake. And that's all of them. That's all the civs ranked, in my opinion, as of the last update to Civilization 6. I'm not sure if we will be getting any new civs or an update for that matter. The Frontier Pass has come to an end, and it seemed very conclusive of Civ 6. Whether they go on to make Civ 7 or a spin off game like Beyond Earth, I'm not too sure, but I'm very excited for the future of Civ, and I love every game they make, even though when Civ 7 comes out, we're all gonna hate it until all the DLC's out, but it'll be a great time hating it together. And then loving it eventually, just like this one. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I know it's been an extraordinarily long one, but there are many civs now, and hopefully this will be the last one I make for Civ 6. I don't think the game should be updated too much past this point, maybe patch notes, but I don't think they should add more civs in packs now. I think we've got a pretty well-rounded amount of civs and different diverse civs. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to leave a comment down below about what your opinions are, because I'm sure there are plenty of them. I'm sure there are plenty of my opinions that you want to comment on. Tell me I'm wrong. Hopefully tell me I'm right too, but that's okay. I'll try my best to respond to all of them. And don't forget to leave a like as well, and subscribe if you want to. I might be putting out Civilization content again. I did a few tutorials, but I'm not really too sure what to do. But in the comments, you can reach out and ask me. Well, not reach out, but you can message down below what you'd like me to see me do on this channel in the future, or leave it as it is until there's a reason to do another tier list again. So something, 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 one last turn.